Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife and sharing some fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today has the most amazing name. I just love her name. It's Rosetta Magdalen, and she is the Dynamic Divorcée, and she is a divorce healing coach. So she works with women to help them get over horrible divorces, which is really rather fabulous. And it's lovely to have you here, Rosetta. Thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I'm going to kick off by asking you why you do what you do. I'm guessing there's a divorce in there somewhere, because usually it's life events that lead us to do these sorts of things, isn't it? But what is your mission?
So my mission is to walk divorced women step by step through a path to have a life that is happier than ever before. And mainly, I'm working with people who find their divorces to be so devastating that they're really not sure that they're going to have a good quality of life going forward. And sometimes they need a step-by-step process and hand-holding to make that feel real for them. So that's what I do.
It can be so utterly traumatic. I've been divorced as well. I know what it's like. Although I did actually leave. I was the one that left rather than the other way around. But so why are you passionate about doing this?
Well, then we get to my own story. Because my own divorce, oh gosh, I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but it was very shocking. So in a nutshell, I found out through the other woman, through receiving an email from the other woman, that my husband had been having an affair with her for 4 years, for some very long time. I had no inkling of this. And she had no inkling that he was married. So she contacted me because she thought I was the girlfriend who refused to move out. And so what a shock for her to find out, but I'm his wife. We've been married for 10 years. We've been together for 15 years. So that was what precipitated it. And then, of course, I filed for divorce afterwards. But what I did not expect was how long it was going to take me to get over this, how many years it was going to take, and how much it was going to wreak havoc with who I thought I was, what I thought my value was to myself and to others. So it just opened up a whole Pandora's box of things, which I found through researching other women going through divorce. This was very common. And I asked, before I started my business, I asked dozens of women at that time, how many years did it take you to get over your divorce? And the average was 5 years, which was kind of what I thought it was for me. And I thought, this is wrong. This is so wrong. That first you go through all of this with your ex, and then it's not over. Then you get to suffer for an additional 5 years. So I found better ways for myself, and then I tested them on other women. And then after I thought that I had something that really worked, that's when I started my formal coaching business. But yeah, it was my own story. I think as it is with so many of us, we heal ourselves and then we think, oh, look, maybe this could work for someone else too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been my experience. But so did you have to change anything in yourself to be able to go down this path?
Yes, I had to look at everything. Yeah. So I had to look at my attitudes toward myself and what I was here on earth to do. I had to look at, a lot of it was societal expectations too. I think sometimes that we don't realize until midlife how much our conditioning plays a role in what we think is possible for us to do and what we think is appropriate for us to do. So, it was all of that,
we have so many
things that are conditioned upon us, don't we? We go through life, I think, just picking up all of these narratives and all these expectations. And I think definitely midlife is that time when we just go, well, hang on a minute, I'm not sure about this, or I'm not sure about that, and how does that relate? And then you throw a divorce in there as well. It's just mayhem.
Well, I think when you throw divorce into the mix, what you're looking at, whether you are the person who left or whether you, or in a lot of cases, in my case and other women's, they were the ones who left, but it was because of the circumstances where they knew they could no longer trust their mate. But what you think is, you blame yourself. What part of this was mine? And a lot of times your spouse or ex-spouse is telling you, well, I wouldn't have done this except you made me do it. If you had been a better wife, if you and so whether you wanted to or not, these things are playing in your mind for, I think, oftentimes years after the divorce is final. So it's looking at what we are made to believe. And I say that not because we don't have responsibility for ourselves, but I think what we are raised to believe and we learn to believe through our marriage and how much we feel we're responsible to take care of other people at the expense of ourselves, that's why this makes women angry a lot of times when I say it, but this is why divorce is such a gift, or maybe any huge life change or challenge or trauma can be a gift, because if it had not happened, there's so many things you would never have learned about yourself, I think.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that. I mean, my early menopause was deeply shocking when it happened, but I wouldn't be doing in the same way as you're doing what you're doing now. I wouldn't be doing what I do now if that hadn't happened to me. And I feel, because I'm sort of a good over 10 years on now, I'm sort of at the so-called normal age of menopause. So I'm able to help women who are going through it now and feeling sometimes as adrift as I felt 10 years ago. But I can say, it's all right, it's okay. We survive, we move on, it's all right. And as you say, it can be better afterwards, and you can learn so much about yourself. And it's just that voyage of self-discovery, isn't it?
Well, and maybe another way to think of it is these things are going to happen in our lives anyway. Health challenges occur, divorce occurs, all kinds of disappointments occur. So if they're going to be happening anyway, then we may as well use them for something.
Yeah,
I guess. So it's not saying, oh, how delightful that my husband cheated and I'm divorced. Oh, what a wonderful gift. But I mean, if it's going to happen anyway, then why shouldn't we grow and realize our beauty and take a hold of our power in whatever way each woman feels appropriate to do? So there are many women who would say, no, my children are my life. My children are the reason I am here on planet Earth. And if that is what it is for that person, then her choices are going to be different from someone who says, yes, I love my children, but I feel I have an additional purpose as well. Or that purposes change as you go through different phases of life.
Yeah. But there's so much to be said about reframing our experience of life, isn't there? Just putting a different perspective on it, looking at it differently and analyzing it and turning it around. And
life causes this to happen, right? And as our lifespans get longer and longer too, there are more phases that even 50 years ago, no one could have been prepared for a really healthy, vital life into your 80s and 90s. And this is something that we can potentially look forward to, but it means there's more time. So it means there can be more learning, or it sort of has to be more learning, because otherwise, what are you going to do with all those years? Yeah. So there's the opportunity for maybe 4 different lifetimes.
Oh yeah.
Maybe,
Absolutely. I don't know. I think I've had probably 4 or 5 careers already.
So maybe 8 or 10.
Yeah, I know. And that's not to say I don't stick at things. I do, but it's that longevity of life, isn't it? And we don't have to do the same thing all our lives anymore. We can We can do all sorts of different things.
Well, you know how it used to be, the path not taken? So I'm starting to think there might not have to be many paths that you don't get to take. You know? So you can't have them all at once, but you might have enough time to pretty much live almost anything that you dreamed of living. Maybe in a different way than you first expected, but you know?
Yeah, I love that.
So I love that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. So what advice do you have for a woman in midlife or beyond who is struggling with the breakdown of a relationship?
Well, you know, I'm not somebody who believes in that 5 stages of grief model. So I believe that there's a certain period where you really have to feel the feelings, and you probably have to let yourself grieve and fall apart as much as your life circumstance will allow you to do. But when you get to that point where you can feel righteous anger, or that you can feel, all right, enough is enough, and I have to do something about this, then, you know, my advice is to look at, not take the blame for everything, but look at what you would have done differently. Look at what you would have chose differently in a mate, if that makes sense. But I mean, collect your evidence and information. Look at what happened. And then, but then you've got to you have your perspective on it then, but then you have to look ahead and what would really make my life worthwhile? What were the dreams that I had when I was a teenager, when I was young? What did I have to give up? What can I still do? What do I still want to do? Like, who am I really inside? Because what I find, especially if you've been married all the way to midlife, so you've been married for a fair number of years, depending on when you first got married, what I find is still women, I feel, give up a lot more of themselves than men tend to do. We tend to be the ones who adapt. We get to decide whether that's something we ever want to do again, but it's like an archaeological dig into who am I really, and who was I, and who did I want to be before I decided, no, that is not what a good wife and mother does. So it's about that, and that is part of the fun of it. So I have clients who don't even remember what their personal style used to be. It can be a question where I ask, what colors do you like? I have them go on Pinterest and find, like, what do you see yourself as now? Pick up some images, put together a board of, like, who do you see yourself as now? What kind of things do you want to do now? What kind of man would you want to have in your life now? What does he look like? What does he do? But these are all questions, surprisingly maybe, that not everyone knows after being married for a long time. I know who I am in relation to this other person, to my spouse, but on my own, who am I? And sometimes that's scary to people, because they think, if I am who I really am, will anybody love me? Can I be who I really am? Would that be okay? Huh? So I guess that's kind of, well, probably not to you surprising, because this is your area as well. But I think, isn't it surprising that we have to make so many accommodations, or we feel that we have to, that we get to the middle of our lives and we're not really sure who we were, who we are, and what's the next stage.
I remember I lost complete sense of myself in my first marriage. I came out of it, and as you say, I really didn't know who I was anymore. I'd become his wife, and we'd lived our life pretty much the way he wanted it lived. And I had to completely rediscover myself. And I tell you, I look back and I was much better looking after I got divorced than I was in the last few years of my marriage.
Me too. I ran into the mother of one of my dance students at the time that I was just separated, and she was a adorable Japanese woman. Very bubbly personality, and she said, I think from what I know of Japanese etiquette, probably something that would be surprising. She clapped her hands together and she said, Rosetta, you look 10 years younger. And because you don't know how this is wearing on you, and you don't know sometimes when you're in the middle of this how much I don't know if I like this phrase, but how much you've given up on yourself. How much you don't really wear anything that you care about anymore. And you don't, how much there's kind of the why bother attitude. Like, we don't know when that's happening sometimes. So yeah, it's a rebirth. It really is.
And then I think menopause is as well. So I kind of got the double whammy. So I got the divorce and then I got the menopause coming early. And it's like, it's just part of your life's journey, isn't it, really? And it's all about the experiences that go to make up who you are.
Well, you chose to end your marriage, but even though you chose, when you think about immediately the 6 months or the year after that, were you immediately happier, or did you also have to go through some kind of adjustment or
It was pretty traumatic overall, but there was a real sense of relief. Yes, I'd been unhappy for a long time, and it had been getting steadily worse. And I won't go into all the details on here, but it was not good. It was not good for me and for my mental resilience, And once I'd made the decision, I never, ever, ever looked back. Never. Sad. I mean, that's sad or not, but I knew it was the right decision, and there was an enormous sense of relief, actually, that no matter, I had so much stuff to work out, and there was a really, really awful divorce process, but there was a sense of relief.
And this surprises me sometimes. All women are different. But I knew I was not going back, and he was begging me to come back, but I just felt like once I know that I could no longer trust someone, then I really didn't feel that there was anything left to build on. But I find that many other women are different. They are willing to give lots and lots and lots of chances. And, this makes me feel sad, because I think, but don't you know who you are? Don't you know who you are? You don't have to take crumbs off the table.
Yes, exactly. It's about layers of upset and layers of betrayal and layers of abuse, isn't it? Because, from your situation, it's been going on for years, hadn't it? Which must have just been so devastating. And how can you come back from that? It's very difficult.
But it was a gift for me, because I knew I wasn't happy in my marriage. I didn't know this was going on, but I would never have left, because I made a vow, and he would have had to have done something like this for me to ever consider divorcing him.
Yeah.
So I feel it's amazing how blessings can turn up in our lives. A lot of times these blessings come looking like dragons.
Yes.
You never see this ever as a blessing, and you don't until you come through the other side of it. And so it's, coming to see, you asked me a while ago in this conversation, what would be my advice to women going through this? Suspend judgment for a while. You think this is the worst thing that's ever happened, but believe women who have gone through it, that your better days are often most of the time ahead of you, because through this process, you're going to learn the entirety of who you are. And you're going to learn about your greatness. And I don't think this is too strong a thing to say. You're going to learn about your greatness and your uniqueness as a human being. And I did not have any sense of that before I went through all this. It took me half a lifetime. You know, and I think, would you say this too? I mean, part of it is, we're talking about divorce today, but midlife too. I think a lot of times for women, you have to go through half of your life to actually know everything that you are.
Yeah, and who you are.
I
absolutely agree with you. Yes. And I think midlife is a wonderful time. That's what I do, why I do what I do, because I think it is a gift. It's a wonderful time to take stock and to stop and think, okay, well, this is the life I've had so far, and this is what I've done or achieved or not achieved or whatever it is, and how do I feel about who I am now, but where do I want to go next? You know, I've got less road ahead of me than I had, probably, unless I live to 104, which is unlikely.
I don't know, it might be pretty likely.
But so that makes that time that much more precious to me, you know, and we talked as well, because I was going to ask Rosetta about her dancing. She's a wonderful dancer, and there's some fantastic videos around. And I asked her about this just before we started recording, and she said that she moved out of that because perhaps you say that you felt that you weren't having enough of an impact in that side of your life, so you wanted to have more of an impact, so you sort of pivoted into something else. And that's where I am really, is I want to have an impact. I absolutely want to have an impact now, and I didn't really before. It didn't really bother me, but it does now.
Well, it's funny. So, you know, Rachel was mentioning my life as a dancer. So, for everybody listening, for the past 20 years, so 20 years as a performing flamenco dancer.
Isn't that cool?
16 years with my own studio in Chicago. And the reason that I said that I'm still in the business, but with all respect to my beautiful students, because it's an ethnic form of dance, so because it's flamenco, what I found through all my years of teaching and performing is instead of my students feeling that through this dance they have the power, what it tends to be is they want to wear the foofy costumes and have an alter ego and feel that they are Spanish dancers, or feel that they're, you know, somehow expressing the Gitanos with the gypsy soul of flamenco. And that is not what I set out to do. You know, what I set out to do was to use this dance form as a medium for anyone, regardless of their culture, to find the power that these dance movements give. And so once I began my coaching, which was back in 2013, I feel like when I'm doing the coaching, I'm assisting women to have a complete life change, where they completely, you know, they connect with their power the way I wanted to do in dance. And I feel that I wasn't able to completely, you know, of course you have to give your students or your clients what they want to have from the experience. And I found that what my students wanted to have through the flamenco dance experience was not what I was hoping to give. So, you know, this is something we all experience, right? We think that we're giving one thing, but what people want to take from it is a different thing. I mean, this happens in marriage too. So why marriages break up? You want to give something, you want to receive something, and you find what the other person wants from you is not what you're uniquely suited to give them. So
that's very powerful, very powerful. So obviously life is much better for you now than you ever imagined it could have been. So what do you like about your time of life now?
Well, this is going to be really selfish, but it is the truth. What I like about my life now is I get to do whatever I want to do. But it's kind of true. Of course, we all have things in our day that, we all have our obligations and we all have the things that we need to do. But I am the determining factor in my life. And whereas in my previous life, I would say my marriage was at the center and I was orbiting around it, or I was walking on eggshells. I was trying to be as much of me as I could be without anybody getting mad at me. And now I feel that I get to be the sun in my solar system, and men in my life orbit around me, and of course are either happy or not, if they're not happy with that, and if I would have to be less of who I am in order to make them happy, well, that's just not a fit for me. So, I love that about life. I'm a crazy idea person. And when I have new ideas about something that I want to do, I get to explore them and go ahead and do them. And I don't have to think, so-and-so would not accept this, or this is not okay for me to do. I can feel free to make a fool of myself as much as I want. And I love that about life. I'm a freedom-seeking person, I found. I didn't realize how much freedom was important to me until I was divorced. And I feel that maybe that's one of my more unusual qualities. I'm not sure that as many women share that quality. It's not that I don't care about being in a relationship, but I really like to be free. And I get to do that now.
Maybe that's your superpower, independence.
Well, I kind of think it is, because maybe one superpower is, if women want to think about what is my superpower, I hear people talking about superpowers. I'm not sure what my superpower is. Maybe it's the thing that you cannot give up. Maybe it's what's the key quality that you can give up everything else, but there's one thing that you cannot give up because it's so intrinsic to who you are. And I think that's probably a good barometer for the superpower. I don't know. What's your superpower, Rachel?
I don't know. As you were saying that, I was wondering, what is my superpower? I'll have to go and have a think about that. Yes.
And then we can use it for good or for evil.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's really good. So is there anything that you dislike about your time of life?
Well, okay. Maybe there is one. No, I mean, okay. So maybe what I would say is, maybe my joints hurt a little bit from overuse as a dancer. But you know what? It's not bad, because when parts of your body tell you things, it gives you an opportunity to see, okay, how can I heal that? It just means I'm not giving enough attention to that. So I kind of like all of the information that I get from my body and my emotions, and those are guides to tell me what I should be doing, or things that, because I move too fast, I'm not always aware of. So isn't that terrible? I can't really think of anything that's
great. Great. No, it doesn't have to be anything you dislike. That's fantastic. Good for you. So what would you tell your 30-year-old self? Don't get married.
No. Because I'm even glad I did that. I mean, I could have made a better choice, but I couldn't have made a better choice from whom I was at that time. Because really I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, and that led me to choose the husband I chose. Yeah. And he had many good qualities as well. You just can't put two people together who have poor self-images and are looking for the other person to, complete them, so to speak. It's just not a good place to go from. But, I didn't know that then. So what I would tell my 30-year-old self, I would say, what I was so afraid to do then, I was afraid to be who I really was, because I thought if I am who I really am, nobody's going to love me. And, if my 30-year-old self really believed, like if somebody dropped down from the sky and said, go ahead and be you, because it's not going to be any better if, you try to tamp yourself down. I mean, that's what I would say. Just go ahead and be who you are, because you can't be anybody else anyway. I tried, but I couldn't.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife podcast. It would really help me get the message out and inspire more women to feel empowered in midlife and beyond if you left me a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you may be listening to this. And share this podcast with your friends too. If you'd like to take your own midlife up a notch, why not join our members club? It's where you'll find the strategies, support and connection you need to live the very best next phase of life. You can find out more and get the show notes for this episode at magnificentmidlife.com. Help me change the world one midlife woman at a time.